what I think is the first event in Sapru House of 2020. Certainly first event in this room. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome Ambassador Norov to ICWA. He is by no means a stranger to Sapru House and the ICWA, and we have had very fruitful interactions with him on numerous occasions in the past. Prior to becoming the Secretary General of the SCO, he used to head a think tank in Uzbekistan, and in that capacity forged very close links with the ICWA, and that has led us to develop links with other think tanks in Uzbekistan. So thank you very much, Ambassador, for the initiative you took when we signed the Memorandum of Understanding between our two institutions, and I'm happy to report that we are having India-Uzbekistan Think Tanks Forum next month, largely as a result of the initiatives you took then. And Ambassador Norov has spoken over here in the past on India-Uzbekistan relations, but today he has a larger format and a much greater responsibility, which is about India and the SCO, and also the future trajectory of the SCO. I'm very grateful also to Ambassador P.S. Raghavan, who despite numerous other commitments is with us here today to chair this session. So with these brief remarks, I would thank you all very much for your presence here. I see in the audience many of very distinguished colleagues who have dealt with SCO for many years, and I'm sure in the discussion which will follow, they will bring that expertise and knowledge to the table. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Ambassador Shri P.S. Raghavan to kindly conduct the proceedings. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Director General Dr. T.C.A. Raghavan, Your Excellency, Ambassador Vladimir Norov, Secretary General of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'll join the Director General in wishing all of you a very happy 2020. Also thank the ICWA for giving me the opportunity to hear our distinguished guest here today, the Secretary General of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Ambassador Norov, who, as we heard, is also a former think tanker, but also an accomplished Uzbek diplomat and a political figure of very long standing. I must say the subject of the SCO and India is one with which I have a very special attachment, since particularly as Ambassador of India to Russia, I have attended many SCO meetings when India was actually an observer of the organization. I also had the honor to be present at the SCO summit in Ufa in July 2015, where India's membership of the SCO was announced. Also, since our guest of honor is an Uzbek diplomat, I think it is pertinent to recall that India signed the Memorandum of Obligations of the SCO in Tashkent in 2016, which set in motion the formal process of India's joining the SCO. One must recognize that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization has had a very remarkable journey since its beginnings as a Shanghai 5 in 1996, I think it was, mainly to deal with border issues that China had with its neighbors in the region. But it rechristened itself as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, again, when Uzbekistan joined it in 2001. Since then, it has broadened its agenda considerably to include political, economic, and security cooperation. Of course, the admission of India and Pakistan as well in 2017 expanded the geographical, demographic, and economic reach of the SCO. And it is, as Ambassador Norov was mentioning just a while ago, now half the world's population. It is also a quarter of its GDP, and its boundary now extends right down to the Indian Ocean. For India, SCO's relevance lies in geography, economics, and politics. Its members occupy a huge landmass which is adjacent to India's extended neighborhood, where India has important economic and security interests. Our membership in the SCO opens up new vistas of cooperation, which India is committed to explore and to avail of new opportunities. Geographically, the SCO Central Asian countries border Afghanistan, Pakistan, and China. A narrow sliver of land separates southern Tajikistan from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. So if you look at it from a political perspective, when you have complicated relations with your neighbors, it makes sense to strengthen relations with your neighbors' neighbors. This is another strong impetus to India's participation in SCO's activities. Of course, it's quite inevitable that when you have a group of 8 countries with different historical experiences and political environments, there will be some divergences of perspectives. For example, SCO members are parties to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, India and Pakistan are not. Similarly, India certainly has a different approach to the Belt and Road Initiative of China, to which all the other SCO countries subscribe. All our countries have been impacted by terrorism, and we talk a lot about it. We need mechanisms of practical cooperation that transcends polemics and addresses the real problems. The SCO has a regional anti-terrorism structure which coordinates intelligence sharing, cooperation on criminal and terrorist activities. And this can make an important contribution towards some kind of a joint approach to terrorism. Our militaries also have conducted joint counter-terrorism military drills in 2018 as well as 2019. Another pressing issue which from India's perspective is great importance and which the SCO has been engaging with is the situation in Afghanistan. The SCO Afghanistan Contact Group has engaged in developing an approach for the restoration of stability in that country. Besides all of this is a vast area of economic cooperation and cultural interaction, which I think, and again Ambassador Norov was talking about this as we were coming into this meeting, it really requires focused attention to avail of the many opportunities that remain untapped. Indian companies, of course, are looking at participation in the economies of the Central Asian countries, members of the SCO, through investment and other involvement in infrastructure and connectivity projects in the region. I think we will hear, I don't want to stand between you and Ambassador Norov, we will hear about all this. We look forward to hearing the views and his views and perspectives on the future trajectory of the SCO with special reference to India. I must also mention that Ambassador Norov has very kindly agreed to take a few questions from you after his address. So we welcome him again and invite him to speak to us. Thank you.
Good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear Bruce, Mr. Raghavans. I thank the Indian Council of World Affairs for inviting me to this interactive mission. I'm very glad that I can visit second time your institute, your council. I was here 2 years before, and we signed an MAU, and we discussed about cooperation and organizing common research about important regional and international issues. In this time, I could not think that I will be Secretary General when we began our cooperation. But what I can say, we know that the ICWA is a leading think tank in India, which studies major regional and international issues and makes prospect for the development of their foreign policy. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization attaches great importance to information and analytical work and seeks to expand the expert dialogue between the research centers of the SCO member states, ASEAN, and European Union. We have such institution of platform for our think tanks. It is Forum of SCO. Last year it was organized in April, and Mr. Raghavan, T.C.A. Raghavan, will participate in this. Since its establishment in 2001, the SCO has successfully integrated itself into the system of international relations in a very short period by historical standards and has consistently strengthened its authority in the world. Today, the organization includes 8 countries: India, Kazakhstan, China, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, Russia, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan, 4 observer states: Afghanistan, Belarus, Iran, and Mongolia, as well as 6 dialogue partners: Armenia, Azerbaijan, Cambodia, Nepal, Turkey, and Sri Lanka. In addition, about 10 countries: Bangladesh, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Egypt, Israel, Maldives, Ukraine, Iraq, Vietnam, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar, that have applied for observer or dialogue partner status, and it's showing that almost 36 countries of Eurasia are already in SCO orbit. With the accession of the India to SCO, the organization has acquired a global profile, opened up completely new opportunities for further development and deepening of full-scale cooperation. The role of SCO as an important mechanism for shaping regional and global policies, ensuring security and sustainable development has increased. Almost half, as it was said, half of the world's population lives in the SCO region, and the SCO covering 60% of the territory of Eurasia, most of which are economically active in this region, the people, and engaged in production of goods and services. On the territory of SCO, there are advanced production clusters, including high-tech and knowledge-intensive type. There are all kinds of minerals for the organization of production cycle of high complexity, as well as increasing the value chains. The total GDP of the SCO member states is about $20 trillion, or 1/5 of the world's GDP. By some expert prediction, in 2030, this GDP will be 35–40% of the world GDP. And by, as in beginning last year, World Economic Forum published some analysis. In 2030, 10 leading economies of the world will be $190 trillion American, and 3 countries, leading countries of SCO, India, Russia, India, China's GDP will be 60% of all these leading economies. So total foreign trade turnover exceeds 6 trillion, or about 15% of the world's foreign trade. The average GDP growth in the SCO space is about 4%. Today, the SCO region is a home to more than 800 million young people aged 15 to 24 who are most exposed to risk and threat in the information space. Therefore, it is important for the SCO to work towards directing high potential of young people to the right direction, developing intellectual skills, abilities, as well as use entrepreneurship in the field of digital and electronic innovation. In the Qingdao Summit in 2018, leaders adopted appeal and program of action for implementation. This appeal to the youth for avoiding our young generation from participating in activities of terroristic, extremistic, and separatistic organization. The SCO also focuses on humanitarian ties. Member states are working fruitfully in the field of education, health, culture, tourism, and youth contacts. We intend to seek to expand the number of participants in the successfully functioning SCO network university, the agreement on the establishment of which has been signed by Russia, Kazakhstan, China, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan, and we hope that India can join to this too. The Russian part of the SCO Youth Council has big plans in this area. In order to create a common tourist space, the SCO Secretariat initiated the 8 wonders of the SCO project, which includes one miracle from each member state. In Beijing, St. Petersburg, in Samarkand, Dushanbe, Xi'an, and Helsinki, we organized a presentation. We express our gratitude to Indian side for the support of this event and the inclusion of the miracle from India, the Statute of Unity. We highly appreciate the efforts of the Indian side to further deepen mutually beneficial cooperation with the SCO. At the SCO Summit Qingdao in 2018, the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Modi, noted that for several thousand of years, the geographical region represented by SCO countries has been a source of inspiration, scientific and philosophical progress throughout the world. Buddha, Confucius, this is just one example. Samarkand, Bukhara are also examples of our common heritage. Mahatma Gandhi and others' names. There are countless examples of great people who have inspired humanity around the world. This is our common heritage that is felt all over the world because thousands of years ago our ancestors traveled geographic distances through bridges of cooperation, and today we are again at the stage when physical and digital interconnectedness are changing the very definition of geography outlined by Mr. Modi in his statement. At the SCO Summit in 2018 in the Qingdao and in Bishkek last year, in which India participated as full member, Prime Minister Mr. Modi put forward a number of important proposals aimed at further deepening cooperation in the field of regional security, strengthening economic cooperation, agriculture, medicine, IT, space, finance, development of alternative energy sources, and environmental protection. India's commitment to dealing with climate change lies in our philosophy, which considers the Earth as our mother, emphasized Mr. Modi in the summit in Qingdao. In this context, I would like to mention the action plan for implementing the concept of cooperation between the SCO member states in the field of environmental protection for period 2019-2021, adopted by head of states, which has created a solid legal basis for cooperation between India and SCO member states. This year, for the first time, India is chairing one of the main SCO bodies, the Council of Heads of Government, Prime Ministers of the organization member states, in second half of this year, in autumn. The member states have highly appreciated India's willingness to host the meeting of prime ministers. The event will be preceded by a number of meetings in India, including the meeting of the SCO Ministers of Economic Activities, meetings of the SCO Commission of Senior Officials on Foreign Trade Activities, the Council of National Coordinators, financial and personal experts, as well as the first meeting of the SCO Consortium of Economic Think Tanks. It is important that first such meeting of SCO Consortium will be in India. India have the huge potential, economic potential, and we consider that 3 countries, China, India, and Russia, should be the locomotive of developing of SCO, mostly in field of economic, multilateral economic cooperation. We have, as I mentioned, $6 trillion more the trade turnover of all member states. But trade between our states only $305 billion or 5%. For example, in ASEAN it is 27%, and in the European Union it is more than 50%. So we think that this consortium will play an important role to find solution for many barriers which staying in strengthening cooperation between us, and to use this big area for benefit of our people, for prosperity of our countries. Mostly Central Asian countries, double landlocked countries, for them it is important to use this potential. The consortium will establish a cooperation between research centers on economic issues and conduct analysis on priority areas. We attach importance to these events, and in this regard, I would like to express the readiness of the SCO Secretariat to actively participate in the preparation and conduct. In the morning, we had meeting with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Jai Shankar, and Minister of Commerce of Mr. Goyal, and both of them supported these ideas. I'm very glad that it has become a good tradition to hold business forums in conjunction with the SCO heads of government meetings to establish direct contact between representatives of the business community, and both ministers supported this idea. And we will take from our side, from Secretariat side, all efforts to make these meetings very successful. I would like to note that active participation of the India side in the SCO mechanism in security sphere, including within the framework of the regional anti-terrorist structure of the SCO through the secretaries of the Security Councils, ministers of defense, interior, justice, prosecutor generals, judicial authorities, and etc., playing important role. Today, we attach great importance to the participation of the Indian side in anti-terrorist military exercises. The distinctive feature of our organization is the universal nature of cooperation, which covers the fields of politics, security, economy, and humanitarian relations. The SCO the development strategy up 2025 has set new guidelines for the organization, taking into account the focus of global and regional development, and confirmed the provision of security and stability in the region as a main priority in its activity. As you know, that SCO, as it Ambassador T.C.A. Raghavan rightly said, Uzbekistan joined in 2001 to organize these 5 countries' unity. After this, 15 June 2001, this organization, Shanghai organization, played an important role, because in this time the Taliban stayed on body of Uzbekistan in Hayraton, and which they, after occupying Hayraton, they killed Iranian diplomats, I remember, and the Al-Qaeda was there. So there was some prediction they gained good forward. It was time in '97. I remember I was state advisor to first president, and they were meeting with Mr. Solana. He was Secretary General of NATO in this time, and President Karimov asked him, if Taliban will come to us, go through body, can you come defend us? There were not answers. So that's why SCO played important role. SCO, an anti-terroristic structure in Tashkent, which was established in 2004, were possible to be the platform, good mechanism where now the Indian representative working to for creating the trust between our member states, between our law enforcement agencies and security agencies. And in the field of security, the SCO has a number of impressive developments. There are conventions and agreements on combating terrorism, drug trafficking, crime, as well as ensuring international information security. In the context of the interdependence of the modern world, no country is able to cope with these challenges alone. On the contrary, to overcome them requires the formation and improvement of effective collective approaches at the global and regional levels. In 2018, the competent authorities of the SCO member states identified and suppressed 10 channels of financing of terrorism, and more than 10,000 foreigners suspected of involvement in terrorist activities were blocked from entering the SCO member states. At the same time, joint anti-terrorist exercises, peace missions are regularly held. We are making efforts to develop common approaches against the use of the internet for terrorist and extremist purposes, based on the equal participation of all states in the development of rules and standards for its operation. In 2018, limited access to 165,000 internet resources containing materials of terrorist and extremist nature, including more than 3,000 accounts of users of social networks. An important contribution in this direction was the SCO Convention on Countering Extremism, signed in 2017, which reflects common multilateral approaches to combating the spread of extremist ideology in society. The document is universal and open to accession by any interested state. I have to say that the main source of the terrorist threat in the SCO space remains the territory of Afghanistan. The current situation in the Afghan border area is of increasing concern and carries potential risk in terms of the spillover effect of instability and the shift of terrorist activity to the neighboring states of Central Asia and South Asia. In particular, evidence of this is a recent attack by ISIS militants on the frontier Ashgabat in Tajikistan. So what we are now witnessing, these forces competing with the Taliban to retake control over drug trafficking, for financing their illegal activity, terroristic activity from one side. From another side, they interested in using this traffic, illegal traffic of drug traffic, these routes for transporting their terrorists, their members to the Central Asian countries, to the Russian and South Asian countries. The involvement of Afghanistan in the production and smuggling of narcotic drugs, which according to various estimates accounts for up 65% of the income of local armed groups, is also of serious concern to the SCO member states. And last 5 years, SCO member states seized up more than 40% of all drugs which were seized by in Eurasian continent. The deteriorating situation in that country requires us to take adequate preventive measures to maintain stability throughout the region, taking into account the continuing threats of terrorists, drug trafficking, and cross-border organized crime. We are talking about a comprehensive solution to the Afghan problem, the political settlement of which the SCO seeks to promote, including by helping the economic recovery of this country. It is first time in the history of Afghanistan. In September, 41 wagons, the train with the 41 wagons, the goods from Afghanistan transported from Khairaton through Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan to China. So we're looking forward that the Afghanistan the economy should be revived by support of all member states. And what is important to support Afghanistan to have the alternative for drugs. Because if we will not find solution for drug producing in this country, it will be difficult to obtain the peace and stability in this country. In Bishkek summit, as it was said, we adopted the roadmap for this contact group, SCO Afghanistan, and we are very glad that India actively participating in the activity of this contact group for an implementation this roadmap. The SCO is ready to continue to serve as a reliable framework for a unified and indivisible Eurasian security architecture, effectively complementing global efforts to counter the ideological and logistical fueling of terrorism and its fusion with a transnational organized crime. We are open to constructive dialogue and cooperation with all interested states, international and regional institutions in building a shared, secure and prosperous future. I want to emphasize that the SCO was originally created as an organization of interaction in the security sphere, but gradually there was a common understanding today of the need to support the work in this area by active development of trade and economic ties. I informed Mr. Raghavan about this during 18 years, 1,400 documents was adopted in framework of our organization, 46% of them dedicated to security, only 7% to economic and humanitarian cooperation. And the relevance of this goal is all the more obvious when SCO members, first of all Russia, China, as well as Iran, which is an observer state, find themselves under the impact of unilateral protectionist measures and economic sanctions and the consequences of the restriction and the impact on the other partners in our organization. Hence, there is a strong consensus in favor of promoting international cooperation to preserve the leading role of the WTO and the rules-based mutually trading system. In the statement of Prime Minister, Mr. Modi at the Bishkek summit was specially mentioned one-sidedness and protectionism have not done any good for anyone. We need, he said, a rule-based, transparent, non-discriminatory, open and inclusive multilateral trading system focused on the World Trade Organization. This will protect the interests of all the members and especially the developing countries. New prospects for trade and economic cooperation are opening up with the formation of the North-South Transport Corridor with a length of more than 7,000 kilometers, as well as with the accession of India to the Ashgabat Agreement on the formation of a new international transport and transit route. The corridor would also be the shortest multimodal transportation route linking the Indian Ocean and Persian Gulf via Iran to Russia and North Europe. The estimated capacity of the corridor is 20 to 30 million tons of goods per year and will reduce time and cost by 30–40%. This project of transit transportation of goods through the infrastructure of railways, roads, seaports will create conditions for sustainable economic development of the participating countries. This giant transport corridor will link St. Petersburg with the Indian port of Mumbai. Moving in the same direction, in November last year, the Council of Heads of Government of the SCO member state in Tashkent approved a new version of the program of multilateral trade and economic cooperation of the SCO member states until 2035, which provides for the implementation of tasks for the balanced development of effective transport infrastructure and the expansion of the use of digital technologies and intellectual system in transport. It also adopted one of the most important documents in the field of railway cooperation, first such document during 18 years, the concept of interaction between the railway administration of SCO member states, which laid the legal basis for the development of cooperation in the field of rail transport. Our member states have the 244,000 kilometers of railways. But what is impressive that 104,000 kilometers, it is Indian railways. It is biggest in the world, this railway connectivity. But what is important to mention that regardless from 2010, 40 times rise transporting container from Asia to Europe and back, but by railroad transported only 1.3% of goods, and by assessment 2.6. This 90% transported by ships. So, but here is several barriers which we should find solution for them, and because transport, railroad play important role today for developing trade economic cooperation in vast Eurasian continent. But if we take in consideration developing e-commerce, we would like to have our goods which we ordered through internet, not if tomorrow, but after tomorrow in our doors. That's why railroad is playing important role, and its importance will rise. In the context of increasing the transit potential of SCO countries, the China, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan railway project may become one of the promising additional routes connecting East Asia with the Middle East, Turkey and Europe, as well as an important link in the transport network within the framework of East-West and North-South project, providing access to international seaports, including Indian Oceans. There is an interesting idea of forming a large Eurasian partnership, a broad integration structure. It is in Russian initiative, broad integration structure that should develop on the basis of network of regional association and transcontinental projects. The transport and infrastructure projects currently being implemented with the framework of the SCO are largely aimed at solving the fundamental task of providing favorable opportunities for states that do not have access to the sea. Mainly it is Central Asian countries, landlocked. And last month, Mr. Guterres made a statement where he outlined the importance of world community to support to the countries which have not direct access to the sea. Uzbekistan with the Liechtenstein in the world, two double landlocked countries. And as rightly mentioned by Mr. Guterres, in the price of goods exported by these countries, 60–70% it is the price of transport. So in this way, we create new blood. Think that we can create new blood artists that will give life-giving powers to the Euro-Asian organism. We follow with a great interest the formation of India and the ASEAN states, of their own approaches to the Indo-Pacific concept, pay attention to their creative, inclusive, and non-confrontational nature, which means multidisciplinary cooperation, connectivity, and sustainable development, respect for international law, and openness to all who want to work on the basis of these principles. It seems to us that the axis of cooperation between Chennai and Vladivostok fits perfectly into the development plans of the Russian Far East and Southeast and South Asia. Such goal setting is fully consistent with the key principles of the concept of the Great Euro-Asian Partnership, which proposed by Russia, in which such mechanism as the SCO and ASEAN can take a worthy place, which being important platforms to cooperation, and thanks to the established partnership, interact productivity in the field of politics, security, and economy. Only through our joint efforts will we be able to unite the vast sea and land space on the vast Euro-Asian continent, to unite the surrounding continents and regions around Euro-Asia. And overall, we believe that the diverse practical activities of the SCO leads to the formation of a larger Euro-Asian partnership, wide integration circuit, which should be developed on the basis of a new network of regional associations, SCO, Euro-Asian Economic Commission, ASEAN, and transcontinental projects, considering principles of transparency and respect for interests of the participants. I would like to mention this Chinese idea, creating the community of common destiny, the same covering this Euro-Asian continent, and the implementation of these ideas certainly play an important role in this regional organization. No doubt their implementation would strengthen economic cooperation in the continent, develop common transport and energy infrastructure, and stimulate technological progress. So it was previous in this course some European export, Western export, that economy with the growing economy of China, India economy. It was that world economic development trend moving from west to the east. Yes, it was this, with the cautiously it was previously assessed, but openly said about it Macron. He said now it's clear that world economy moving from west to the east. Yes, it is historically, as Mr. Modi said in his statement in Sindao, that during 1,000 years our countries, which now united by this organization, played an important role in economic development. Now, world community benefiting from the first technical revolution information, where they're introducing artificial intelligence based on the 5G speedy communication networks and Internet of Things, and nanotechnology and so on. Our life will be different. Business will be different, and certainly the countries which will be not ready to implement these advantages will stay behind. But on the ground of this, laying this innovation of our countries, 1,000 years before algorithm, I worked more than 10 years in Europe as ambassadors. I educated our colleagues and our friends that algorithm, it is not Latin words. It is the name of Al-Khwarizmi. Al-Khwarizmus, algorithmus, founder of algebra. In 11th century, in 10th or 11th century, he used Indian achievements, Indian accounting, zero, beginning from zero. And now combination 0101, it is staying behind the software and achievement. And that's why we are very glad that our countries like China, India, and Russia doing big success in digitalization and e-commerce. China certainly one of the leading countries in the world, and SCO the same for e-commerce. 35% of trade turnover of these countries through e-commerce. What is important, it is not only doing good business, but at the same time, labor forces. And 55% who engaged in e-commerce in China, it is women. We're more talking about gender equality, women empowering. But here is the strong ground. In India, as I read yesterday, it was 20% of women in this business. And what is important that e-commerce is developing in China rapidly. In India, it's the same, very rapidly. Today, 9,000 e-commerce companies, and next year it will be 11,500, and their trade turnover will be 250 billion American dollar. But at the same time, I am sure that it will rise. I was recently in Fremont, and my daughter living there in San Francisco. There's a Silicon Valley. And I was witnessing surrounding only Indian. The Indian restaurant, Indian cinema theater, everything. So I questioned myself, why these people not doing this good business in their own country? We should create such condition. That's why I met the Alibaba, the president, former president, now he retired, Mr. Jack Ma, and we talked about it. They are training 1 million young students in ASEAN states. I said, okay, we have 800 million. Why you cannot train them to help to our countries? And last week we had in our secretariat meeting with the vice-president of this country, the giant e-commerce company, Mr. Brian. We talked about some program implementing for developing by them in developing ecosystem of e-commerce in our country. It is a big opportunity. That's why I think that we see a far-reaching meaning in the deepening interaction between the think tanks of SCO family state, the European Union, and ASEAN. In the current violative global situation, experts and scientists must fully carry out their predictive work. That's why I'm applying to you, to work with you. I would like to continue to work with you, to have more ideas from you, what SCO should do. Where in April this year will be next forum of SCO in Kyrgyz Republic. Yes, we will send you this agenda. We prepared our view secretariat. We sent to Kyrgyz side, to think tanks of Kyrgyz who is responsible. And we will be glad if we can transform this forum of think tanks, forums of our organization to institution which can play important role in developing and to use all potential of our countries and to find solution all contradiction which we have, to find solution to avoid all barriers. And because if we're looking, China is growing as India, but as Mr. Xi Jinping outlined it 2 years before, $30 trillion will import China after 15 years. All member states have common border with China, without Uzbekistan. But China imported last year $2 trillion, but imported from member state only $100 billion. So we should look to this. The same India, by joining to SCO, raised its third trade turnover with the SCO member state 27%. It was $88 billion trade turnover in 2017, and 2018 more than 100 billion. But at the same time, 80 billion, it is import of India. So India disbalance. So we should think how we can benefit from this organization. Our ordinary people should benefit from this. Everyone who living here in our countries. Thank you for your attention. I not announced.
Go down and see. Okay, so we can see. You feel it about go down?
Wonders of SCO.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Norov, for the broad spectrum coverage of SCO and the opportunities that SCO has as a whole, and also what India can bring to the SCO. I think you of course started off by talking about the security cooperation in the achievements of jointness in counterterrorism drills, the regional anti-terrorism structure, and the efforts to build an inclusive security architecture in the SCO region. Afghanistan, the contact group, trying to see how we can combat terrorism, introduce a stable political situation in the country, economic reconstruction. But a large part, I think very appropriately, of your address was about the economic interaction that we can promote, the 7% of the 1,400 documents, to increase that number greater to the consortium of economic think tanks, I think, is a very good initiative which can look into the issues that are actually bedeviling the economic cooperation problems in the region. There, of course, connectivity is an important issue, transport infrastructure is an important issue, logistics, and how we can promote the North-South transport corridor, make use of the Ashgabat agreement better, see if we can use the Chennai-Vladivostok link that you talked about, maritime corridor that are being established. I think all of this can get greater consideration during the Council of Heads of Government meeting to be hosted by India in the second half of 2020. And underlying all of this, of course, is the underpinning of stronger tourism. We saw the film, which also is on promotion of tourism. I think the tourism and cultural interaction have to be an underpinning to all the other interactions that we have in the SCO. And of course, you pointed to the need to engage the youth, 800 million youth in the SCO region, to engage them in this enterprise. So it was a broad spectrum presentation. What I'd like to do is to invite audience comments, questions, which Ambassador Norov has kindly agreed to take. So, Ambassador Sajanhar, then you. Shall we take 2 or 3 of them together and then? Yeah, Ambassador Sajanhar, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Ashok Sajanhar, former ambassador, and thank you, Ambassador Norov, for an excellent, very detailed and comprehensive presentation. As you said, your focus has been on 2 issues. One is security and the other is economic development. So first on security. Now you did mention, the contact group on Afghanistan in SCO that has been revived. But would you, and you said that, 55 wagons have gone through Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan to China, so economic reconstruction. But I'm sure SCO can do more. There are sort of initiatives you see, you hear about the Moscow initiative, you hear about the Beijing format. In Kabul, Uzbekistan itself has had some initiatives. Can SCO take an initiative in this regard? Because basically what we really need, first of all, of course, economic reconstruction is important, but peace, security, that will really bring economic development. So in that context, what is it you think that SCO could really bring to the table? Not countries separately, but the countries together. How can they do that? And if you permit, Ambassador, I would like to, refer to the comment that you made to Javier Solana in 1997 when you said, if Taliban comes, would you have really liked if NATO forces had come in to deal with the incursion of Taliban? In the same context, when in Uzbekistan, you had the problems in 2005 in Andijan when there were terrorist attacks. SCO was very much in position. Should not SCO have taken some action to deal with the issue of terrorism in one of its own member states? My question to you. Now, on the issue of economic development, again, very, very important. You said out of the 1,800 documents, as Raghavan has also said, only 7% deal with economics. And that really needs to be. But if we look at it, there have been a number of initiatives that have been made. For instance, China came up with the idea of SCO Bank, SCO Development Fund, but nothing really has moved. While as against that, if you look at, another organization, global organization, not so much a regional, BRICS, which is younger than SCO, but we've had a new development bank, we have a currency swap system, etc. There are these important decisions that have been taken. So in that context, what is it that SCO can really do together as a group? And last question, if you have given a very detailed account of what SCO has been able to achieve, but if you could identify 2 or 3 most significant successes or achievements of SCO since 2001 when it was formed. Thank you very much.
I said we'll take a few questions bunched together, but these are 4 already from one source. So I think we'll just have one more question from the gentleman here, and then we'll invite Ambassador Norov to respond.
Excellency, thank you very much for a wonderful speech. I used to be a member of the Union Home Ministry, dealing mainly with security issues. Last year, I was invited to China for a discussion on regional security and development in South and Southeast Asia. And I was asked to make a presentation. I was not asked to speak on security at all. They wanted me to talk about how to improve India-China cooperation in international affairs. That was something very, very unusual. So in preparing for the lecture, I read a speech made by President Xi Jinping in the SCO conference the previous year. And it was absolutely important, absolutely impressive, brilliant speech by President Xi Jinping. And we all hope that something new will come up after the India and Pakistan have joined the organization, and cooperation will start. But I find, to my disappointment and the disappointment of all those who want peace between India, Pakistan, and also the role of Russia. We want that India, Pakistan, and China should together jointly bring peace to South Asia. But unfortunately, we have been thoroughly disappointed. What is happening is tensions between India and Pakistan is increasing, and neither Russia nor China is able to intervene positively. Now, that's something very disappointing for such a great organization which represents a majority of the population of the world, and which is inspiringly led by somebody like President Xi Jinping, and also this so-called BRI, and all sorts of things are happening in the world. But I think the Indian response has been somewhat below the expectation. So what is it that SCO can do to improve India's response to the crisis that is facing India today? Yeah.
I can answer. So, security and Afghanistan, certainly the main factor of stability and prosperity, if we can say, security in Afghanistan. If before we look at Afghanistan as a main source of terrorism, extremism, now we're looking to Afghanistan as an opportunity for development. This focus on this issue come after coming to the power in Uzbekistan, President Mirziyoyev. He said in his first statement that Afghanistan historically, geographically, ethnically is part of Central Asia, and Afghanistan should be involved in all regional cooperation. This SCO played important role as a platform for uniting this common position of member states. Yes, it was for Tashkent conference played important role in March last year, and Moscow process, it is important where Taliban representative participated in some negotiation, and now with the Taliban, all countries in the region try to establish some contact to find solution. And everyone now is American in negotiation with the Taliban. The important role playing the ministerial meetings and Russia, United States, India, and China, or Pakistan and China. This a lot of such a mechanism now is for bringing the peace and stability in Afghanistan. But at the same time, SCO cannot replace the military forces there. SCO have not such forces, united forces, to replace. And first of all, We last week had some round table in our secretariat. We invited more than 10 Chinese think tanks, institution, and permanent representative of member states made their statement about situation. So there were common conclusion. The SCO have not resources or potential to bring the peace in Afghanistan. But SCO can play an important role in capacity building of Afghan side for fighting against terrorism and extremism and drug trafficking and coordinating effort for fighting against these threats. At the same time, SCO have a big potential for social economic reconstruction of Afghanistan. Uzbekistan constructed railroad from Hayraton to Mazar-e Sharif, and now we're looking forward for construction this to Herat. The India is invested more in Charbagh, Zakhedan, Dilaram, this rail work, this constructed by Indian side too, and if there will be, it will be big impetus for Afghan economic development. What is problem of Afghanistan? It is drug trafficking from this country, and how to replace this drug, how to encourage farmers to replace drug by alternative agricultural products, as made ASEAN member states in Thailand, for example, they successfully. Afghanistan is a landlocked country. It is more easy when drug trade are coming, giving immediately to the hand of farmer $2,000 or $3,000 from 1 hectare of land. They can then harvest this enough opium or gashish, and that's why it is important. I remember 2005, I was head of our mission in NATO in Brussels. Then it was discussed in this time the NATO involvement in the reconstruction group. It was each NATO member states made there, and what is important to say that I propose it as head of mission to NATO. If you are there, you should fight against drug trafficking. I worked 15 years in criminal police in Soviet time. In Bukhara region, we had local drug producers, and each year we take action against these drug producers. But if NATO here, we said you are only one forces there, man, you should take steps. But the representative of NATO in Afghanistan, Mr. Chetin, I remember his name, he said it should be not, it is impossible to do, because drug, it is half of GDP of this country. So you see this attitude. That's why 18 years, but nothing changed in this area for this. That's why SCO countries can contribute. India is contributing a lot, $2 billion. India, today 3 billion, very nice. 3 billion, this contribution. And all countries now, Russia talking with Afghan side for reconstructing more than 100 enterprises which were constructed in the time of Soviet Union involvement in Afghanistan. The same time, Kazakhstan training 1,000 Afghan people. So each country made this contribution. That's why reviving activity of contact group and adopting roadmap, it is important, where we should coordinate our efforts and to focus. And President Mirziyoyev not only made statement after coming to the power, he initiated construction in Termez, some special center for training young Afghan men and women, girls, and 100 more, and its capacity will rise to 300 persons. At the same time, on border area, established free trade zone with 10,000 square meters, where Afghan business people can do their business together with Uzbek or any countries, because for guarantee their security, their energy, and all infrastructure will be provided to them. We're supplying now Kabul with the electro power, Uzbekistan, and we will double it in the nearest future by construction Puli-Khumri Reach. So you see this, and what is important is Taliban itself interested in infrastructure. They are the same using this is. But it is important to unite our efforts, and SCO played an important role when SCO leaders in this declaration of Sindao Bishkek Declaration very strongly outlined that this negotiation, this peace process should be Afghan-led, Afghan organized, Afghan controlled, as is for Afghans, and Afghan-led, Afghan-owned, and Afghan-controlled. It was a statement of Mr. Modi in the summits, and this is common approach. This is important. I remember 2008, I was Minister of Foreign Affairs. In Bucharest summit NATO, President Karimov said there is not military solution. There should be a revived contact group, which was before Taliban, Al-Qaeda's joining in 98. It was first meeting in Tashkent. Tashkent conference where representative Taliban and North Afghan groups, Shah Massoud, participated there. And there was declaration where came to conclusion there should be some negotiation process. But 11 September changed everything. But at the same time, there were proposed 6+3, NATO, United States, and Russia, to make such contact group and to bring to. I participated in many meetings of President Karimov with the American leadership, with the generals who were CENTCOM leaders. In this time, it was said, began negotiation to find some Taliban, negotiable Taliban. You should begin it, but there were preconditions. First of all, Taliban should recognize constitution, Taliban should recognize government, Taliban should recognize women's rights. Taliban fighting because they're not recognizing government and constitution. Today, what is important in Tashkent conference in March 2018, it was a declaration where it is high-level meeting, all ministers of SCO member states participated, from United States State Secretary, Iran Minister for, and all, there are more than 20 ministers. They have made it without any precondition. Negotiation should be beginning without any precondition. That's why this role of SCO in this way for uniting common position very important. But we have not any legal base for organizing such any mission in abroad. We have not forces, and we cannot. We cannot do it. It should be made by certainly Afghan its own. We should support Afghan rising military capacity, and our country is supporting in this way. Can NATO, as you said, it will be nice if NATO will come. We're witnessing NATO being in Afghanistan, perhaps 1 trillion.
I didn't say it is nice. I was asking you
Yes.
whether you would support it. Because
Yes, we support it. We supported to coalition forces. We're giving them our air base in Termez for Bundeswehr for fulfilling their missions. But unfortunately, they are not fulfilling this mission rightly. 800 million or 1 trillion saying American money they're spending. I remember I talked into German. I was ambassador in Germany. I said, you during 1 year brought to Afghanistan 1 million liter of beer. Why it is needed? Bring water, 1 billion from Frankfurt by plane. In reports they said they spent 100 million euro and so on. But for what? The way is a result of this contribution to this. This is why. Yes, certainly, it is, we cannot say that nothing changed. It is a lot. Afghanistan of 2018 or 19 or today, it is more different than Afghanistan 2001. It is, yes, they have now military forces, security forces, their children and girls is going to school, the number is rising, and the healthcare system developed. It will be not rightly if we say that it is not played important role. But at the same time, they lost the time, they lost the opportunity when they began. I was in Bonn negotiation 1990, I think it was 2002. Yes, 2002. It was 2000. Mr. Karzai was superstar. Mr. Khalizad was there. He was everyone of European leaders. They concentrated their attention around Mr. Karzai, that he is the solution of problem of Afghanistan. But Taliban ignored it. It was a big mistake. And now we should not ignore them. And I said to you, that's 2008, Karimov has said, okay, we should begin negotiation. Because we had experience in Central Asia with the Tajik opposition forces. We had experience when Tajik government came together in negotiation and peace process began. This conflict is found solution with the support of Russia, Uzbekistan, and other Central Asian countries, and certainly in Asian countries, South Asian, Iran. There were too in this process. But at the same time, that's why when we're talking about how we bring the peace in Afghanistan, first of all, we should give them signals as our countries, SCO countries, staying behind for this big process. That's why We think that all countries, foreign countries, should join efforts under the auspices of United Nations to find solution to this problem. It is for Afghanistan and NATO. And in 2005, this terrorist act, yes, it was very serious threat to this. And unfortunately, there was not, I worked as an ambassador in Brussels in this time. They could not understand this, what's staying behind all this. Yes, there are economic problem. It is one of reason, unemployment, another reason, but terroristic activity of extremistic organization like Hizb ut-Tahrir, which promoted the idea of Caliphate, Sharia law, and so on, they spoiled the mind of many young people. Thousands were involved in this case. What is interesting, they involved not uneducated. With a high education, they were involved in this activity. That's why it was a very serious threat. And certainly, what is important to say about SCO? The SCO not a military political bloc. They have not supranational some structure. The SCO decision-making based on consensus. It is open, not directed against any country or international, or regional or international organization. That's why this some questions or contradiction between member states, it was made from beginning decision that our efforts should be concentrated and conditionally and consistent to fighting against terrorism, extremism, and separatism. So, not bringing to the agenda of SCO. If you remember, till Mr. Mirziyoyev, there were prediction that in Central Asia will be war, and Mr. Karimov said in 2007 or 2014 or 12 in Astana meeting that it will be war if transport river problem will be not resolved in Central Asia. The border delimitation is not resolved. By coming the President Mirziyoyev, first he said, all regional problem we should resolve on the base of consensus, first on the reasonable compromise, and found solution. And all there were times when it planned to construct wall on the border with Kyrgyzstan. We came till to this idea. In this time it was such. And we opened the border, opened the market, not visa. Tajik can move without visa during 1 month. How long you can tolerate your relatives in your home coming from other parts? 1 week, maybe 2 weeks. but you will say, okay, you should go. Some we have the joke from 1,000 years. Nasruddin Afandi, joker, you know. He told to his old friends, relatives, why you not coming to us guests? It will be good if you can come, and to his relatives. And one day, all of them began to come. And one said, Mr. Afandi, where I should put my, my horse, another saying, my donkey, yes, donkey. And so he said, to my leg. This is why 1 month, but 2 million moving easily from Tajikistan to Uzbekistan and from Uzbekistan to Tajikistan. President Uzbekistan special, we need ourselves the financial support, but $100 million to Kyrgyz side with a low level interest and Tajik side for directed this money for constructing joint ventures for producing some agricultural machines in Tajikistan with Uzbek companies, and in Kyrgyzstan some consumer goods and so on. It is trade turnover between our countries in the region was 3-4%. Today it is rising, and we plan to, with Kazakhstan to rise to now is $4 billion. We would like to come to $10 billion trade turnover with Kazakhstan and neighboring countries. The same for India and Pakistan, as you said. This I would like to answer to your question. This, first of all, it should be solution on the basis of consultation. One of the Shanghai, the spirit, the main principle of Shanghai spirit, mutual trust, mutual benefit, equality, consultation, and respect for difference of cultures and common development. So we think that the Pakistan and Indian representative working together in regional anti-terroristic structure, working together in secretariat, and those military forces of two countries participated in military exercises, anti-terroristic exercises in the Russian territory. So we think step by step, it should be from both sides found some solution for this, because any involvement of third side immediately rising such, but nevertheless, it is Russia play important role, China the same from their side, because all understand this. It was some very big concern about situation when I met September in New York, Mr. Guterres. He said this in this state, Mr. Qureshi in his statement, that it will be such great response from Pakistani side. He was very concerned at Mr. Guterres in this time. But wisdom of Pakistani leadership, the same played important role to come to some process of calming situation. Because we can benefit from our uniting our efforts. The big economic potential for these countries, for all of us. That's why we should unite our forces. Yes, it is rightly said, the SCO banks, SCO fund, it is important. We have not financial, such common united financial institution which can finance our multilateral some projects. That's why we have Interbank Association, and they have every year meetings before the summit of heads of state, where they discussing the bilateral some project, how finance. But nevertheless, this playing important platform. This question of interest, the question of how it should be found the interest. And now we're talking about using national currency, and we're now preparing the roadmap of using national currency for trade economic cooperation. BRICS very successful in this way. I agree with you. That's why maybe Russian side initiated some forum, BRICS and SCO forum, business forum, and several such events during their presidency. And I think this idea, which is Russia now putting forward, integration of integration, and big Euro-Asian partnership projects, it will be play important role, I think, to find such a way. Because if we will not rise our trade economic and investment cooperation, we'll lose the time. We'll lose the time, and we will rise the challenges. As I told you, 800 million young men in age of from 15 to 25. It is not yet this problem resolved. Unemployment. Uzbekistan, 2 million gastarbeiters in Russia and other countries. So it is very serious for us. That's why we should look. And what you said, 3 achievements. The first achievement, peace and stability. If it will be not peace and stability, I will not more concentrate my attention to economic cooperation, because we will be, all of us, concerned for cooperation. It is first, peace and stability in SCO region, and that's why SCO became attractive. Mr. Guterres, in November, we made in the United Nations some common site events dedicated United Nations and SCO for peace and stability, and predicting cohesion, terrorist organization with a transnational organized crime and drug trafficking, with a drug business. Because now with such tendency, it will be a very serious threat to challenge to us if such will be cohesion of them. And he said that SCO playing important role for regional and international security, and representative of American embassy there, there were 180 representative of diplomatic mission of member state of United Nations. He said, why are you doing such side events only with SCO? It should be made with other countries. So we're planning this year to make it trilateral, United Nations, SCO, and ASEAN. That's why we're applying to India as a one good partner with ASEAN in framework ASEAN Plus, as China, as Russia, to give its influence for strengthening our cooperation with ASEAN member states against drug trafficking, against terrorism, and to develop our economic cooperation with this big area in logistics and transport. This is idea of Indo-Pacific partnership, which is India is promoting with ASEAN. It is for interest of all countries. SCO countries the same. One Rail, the Indian initiative, One Belt, One Road, it is the same, covering this whole area. This is, that's why second important issues, it is creating the atmosphere of trust to each other. the mutual respect and trust. That's why I think this it was avoided some negative some continuation of this after this November after Kashmir issues when Indian side government take decision to reshape the status of this region. So it is important. It is second important. No one, and third important that our organization became as an example for other regional organizations where the countries, regardless their economic potential, military potential, people, number of population or territory or resources, have the equal rights. Consensus making. No one decision will be taken if there will be not full consensus among members. That's why and that's why our country became attractive for Bangladesh, for Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates. The ambassador of United Arab Emirates came to me and said, we would like to be observer in regional anti-terroristic structure because this is your structure very effective. We see that this is very important. Israel would like to be the member, part of SCO member states. So that is, I think, where is respect for differences of. There is countries with different political system. For example, India is different political system than in China. But at the same time, here is a common goals. Goals, security, stability, prosperity. It is such achievements.
Well, thank you very much. I think we've run completely out of time, so we'll have to conclude the session here. Please join me in thanking Ambassador Norov for what must be said was an inspiring lecture. It's a lecture that set out the course of SCO, including the many, many opportunities and potential that India has to participate in it. And I think you summarized very well the three achievements of SCO at the end. Peace and stability, regional security contribution, mutual respect, and equality.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you very much. And I'd like you to join us in thanking Ambassador Norov for giving his time to us.
Join us for tea over there. Yes. So we'll print your lecture.
Okay.
All the guests are invited for refreshments at the foyer. Thank you.